they've had the best sex in their lives, and they're over 60 or 70 or 80. Lesbian, gay, and bisexual Americans are far more likely than straights to use a dating app, a dating site, and they give the statistic of 51% versus 28%.
Nan Bauer Maglin and Dan Hood's new book, Gray Love, Stories About Dating and New Relationships After 60, is a rare opportunity to talk about love, sexual intimacy, hookups, and the desire for companionship to intertwine with aging. What makes Gray Love unique is how it showcases men's and women's own voices in this adventure. The nitty-gritty headlines of first dates, the joy of getting to know someone's history, politics, quirks, and the inevitability of decline. Let's talk about Gray Love. So we welcome Nan Bauer Maglin and Dan Hood to Unapologetically Queer. And I understand you two are dating, and you wrote the book together, and you're both allies to the LGBTQ plus community. Did I get all of that right?
True.
Except we didn't write the book. 42 people wrote the book. It's 42 separate pieces.
Essays, exactly. And for clarity, both are retired City University, New York professors. So let's zero in on Gray Love. First off, let me give you a little more of a description. Gray Love is an ambitious effort and includes 42 essays, as Nan just said, covering a range of topics from dating while mourning the loss of a partner to what to write on an online profile for your dating app. Not surprisingly, there's both comedy and tragedy here. The book is an ambitious effort that includes 42 essays covering ranges of topics from both men and women between the ages of 60 and 94, from straight and queer, from diverse backgrounds talking about dating, starting or ending a relationship, embracing life alone, or enjoying a partnered one. So Nan, Dan, tell us a little bit about what was your inspiration. Why did you write a book? I understand it's the essays, but why did you curate a book like this?
Well, it started with me. This is my 9th book, and I always do books on issues that I'm facing, and I figure other people are facing it also. And when I was in my mid-70s, my husband died, and after a year or two, I wanted some intimacy, some relationships. And so I did go online. I went on OkCupid and I went on Match. And I didn't know what to do. I wanted to hear other people's experiences, older people's experiences, and especially older women's experiences, how they did it. Did they get answers? What does it mean to be ghosted? All these kind of questions I had. So I figured, here's what you do. You just put out a call and you get people to write for it, and so you hear a variety of experiences. And I asked Dan to help me edit it.
I noticed in our short pre-interview, I asked how you reflected your relationship, and I asked you, are you partners? Are you dating? And you collectively hemmed and hawed a moment and concluded something in the middle. Even with your experience, dating and relationship for seniors can be complicated, can it?
Indeed.
And I think that one of the things the book shows, and maybe Dan can say this better than me, that there's, we're used to be either married or single. And the book shows you that especially older adults, they're interested in a variety of relationships or forms of relationships. And a lot of them choose something that's been coined LAT, living apart together. I mean, when you're older, we're both 81, you don't particularly want to live with somebody and you're so used to your own style. So you live apart, but together.
Live apart and spend time together. Yeah.
Right.
Live apart and spend time together. We're going to groundbreak in our conversation here. because I have so many friends, Gen Zer friends, that would say the exact same thing. No, I hook up on Grindr and I love the interaction, whether it be an hour or 3 days, and then we go our separate ways for a while, and then we come back together. So it really is the same thing. Let's talk about some of the essays that are included. Give us some examples, some of the highlights of essays that are written in your book. First off, did I get that correct? It's an amalgamation of men and women, straight and gay, between 60 and 94 years old. Is that correct?
That is correct. And I think we have about 13 men writing, and some the rest of the 42, actually there's 45 people because 3 of the essays are written jointly, but we have many more women writing, it's hard to get men to really open up personally.
Yeah. Give us some examples.
Oh,
of
really?
some...
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, so we're gonna counsel Dan before we finish the interview. Give us some examples of some of the essays. What do people that are thinking about relationship and sex and how to navigate all the various issues that are going on? What were some of the words that they wrote about?
Would you like to hear about the 3 LBGT
Oh, yes, absolutely.
essays?
Yeah.
Why don't we summarize them first, and then we can talk about others if you want.
Okay, great.
There's 3 of them, 2 by men and 1 by a woman. Jonathan Ned Katz, who's he wrote a well-known history of gay people. He advertised for a date on Facebook. And so it's his advertisement of looking for men who were interested in an art historian. So it's a quick dating, an advertisement. Then there's Jan Jacobson, who writes about coming out of a long, Dan, you can add to this if you want, writes about coming out of a long marriage. She gets divorced, it's her choice, and she goes on Match after a while to find a more intimate, more communicative kind of partner. And after trying men for quite some time, she realizes that's not going to work. And she decides, and she's never thought of this before, it's totally out of her experience. She decides to go on Match and look for women. And she does. After like 3 different dates, she meets a woman she really likes, but gets scared. And so she pulls back, and then she decides, that's crazy. This woman was really like what I'm looking for, really open and intimate. And so they've been living together for 5 years now.
Oh, wow.
And the last is Eugene Roth, and he describes, again, after a long-term marriage, loss of his partner, and he goes on Match, and he describes 3 different encounters with different men. And he feels like, why would anybody be interested in a 67-year-old guy, especially given the youth-oriented culture? And he finds somebody, and they've been together for like 16 years. So those 3 describe not so different from, the heterosexual pieces in the book.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask. Of the essays that you curate into Gray Love, do you find that there is a desire? What's the top impetus of what's being discussed by seniors, whether they're straight or LGBTQ plus? Are they looking for companionship, relationship, just to talk, just to have coffee, to have sex? What did you find as you were curating these essays that people were talking about, that they were looking for, and what they found?
I'd say they were looking not to be alone. And that could take any of the forms that you just listed, from in-depth, long-term love relationships to coffee once a week or something similar.
Yeah. It's
and the issue.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, 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 you.
issues they face in this search are the same as younger people, but there are also other issues that seem very important to older people. Like if you have old children, their response to you as an older person dating and having sex is kind of heavy. And the other thing is, and this is really hard when you're older, like when you meet somebody, you have to deal with illness and disability. And unfortunately, that you don't have a future. You have an ending coming up at some point in this relationship, which is unfortunately death.
Yeah, I understand that. I do a talk show called It's Happening Out. Just this week, I celebrated my 63rd birthday. And in the show, I deal with mostly Gen Z and millennial age group. And the standard joke to make to get it out is an age joke. And I always go, okay, well, bring it on, because if that's all you got, I'm going to eat your lunch. Because you better keep up with me, and an age joke is not going to be able to do it. But what's always interesting to me is, and then frequently it's not meant to be of offense in any way, but it seems like the tag for seniors is that all we're interested in doing is to sit on the rocking chair on the porch, and life is over. And there could be nothing further from the truth, right? And that's one of the things that you learn in Gray Love, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, desire doesn't end when you retire from your career or your job. Sexual desire for both physical and emotional contact.
And in fact, a number of the people in the book write about that they've had the best sex in their lives, and they're over 60 or 70 or 80. And I think if you try to understand why that's true, it's because, first of all, you don't have little children running around. You often don't have a work career, or your ambitions about career are sort of settled. And you can actually just luxuriate in the physical relationship.
I love
and it's
that
very
phrase.
rare. We're very lucky.
Dan, you're very lucky. Luxuriate in the physical. I love that. Let's talk about how you get there. And I understand that you two met in a dating app. The joke, of course, in LGBT, we have a dating app, and it's called Grindr. Not really a dating app, but kind of similar. But let's talk about reaching out and how seniors are doing it, and what you found and what kind of advice you heard. Almost all of the contributors in your essays that you curated sought new partners on Match.com or OkCupid. Both have extensive LGBT sections, and expressed trepidation about going on to online dating. What were some of the conclusions about how people dated and what their experiences were in dating? After all, this is a technology that 70-year-olds had, through most of their life, had never experienced before. So they're embracing a new technology. And tell us about what the experience was in using dating apps.
That lack of experience is interesting, because as academics, we were required to learn that technology in some detail. So we didn't really have that difficulty. And I don't recall, are there people in the book who expressed difficulty with it?
Yes,
Okay.
Especially like several of the people in their 80s, and they had their daughter help them or their trainer help them. And I found, like, in terms of some of the issues when you go online, like, I was advised by friends to dye my hair, that you shouldn't appear online with gray hair.
She didn't.
But I thought about it, and there's all sorts of things that you're advised. Don't talk about your disabilities. I don't know, but what else?
Well,
Go ahead.
who was it? One of the gay men who basically wrote an advertisement, which you mentioned.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I did, and some other people did as well, I decided what kind of woman I was looking for. My wife, who died relatively young, and suddenly was a musician and worked in finance. I was looking for somebody who was more of an academic, and I made that very clear. I mean, I wasn't adamant or demanding about it, but before I met Nan, I dated half a dozen women or more and had a couple of month or so long relationships, mostly with academic women, and we tended to work together pretty well.
Yeah, excellent.
So that's important. It's important to know what you want.
One of the things
I wanted to give you a. Sorry, go ahead.
Please,
You go.
No. You go ahead. Go ahead.
I wanted to give you a statistic because I'm conscious of what show we're on. And this is from Pew Research Center saying that lesbian, gay, and bisexual Americans are far more likely than straights to use a dating app, a dating site. And they give the statistic of 51% versus 28%.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other statistic they give is that more queer folk have found partners online than straight people.
Yeah. Our barrier to entry, even for older LGBT, is lower than our straight counterparts. One of the things that I read about somebody commenting about the book that I thought was interesting is they called it the kids in the candy store phenomenon for seniors, especially LGBT seniors that are pursuing new relationships, new sexual interaction, etc. And we saw this quote that we thought was very interesting. Dr. Helen Fisher, the chief science advisor at Match.com, advised people not to look at more than 9 profiles at Match at any one time. And from there, she said, it's important to narrow down your choices and focus. Otherwise, it's like being in a alluring candy store where somewhere else or someone else is potentially better suited to you, is always right around the corner, and you just continue to pursue the best next thing, which is antithetical to why you're there in the first place. Was your experience in curating Grey Love that would you agree with Match.com's recommendation, the doctor there, that the experience in dating apps should be less rather than more?
Yes.
Well,
is the simple answer.
One of the men in the book, a heterosexual man, wrote about just saying that it was like a candy store that was endless. The next one might be even better. I don't think women find that. It's men online that find it. But I do agree with Helen Fisher that you have to move quickly to seeing the person, either online or a date. For instance, when I was dating and I met somebody on Match, and I loved the way he wrote, because I'm an academic, I like words. I love the way he wrote. So I could have continued like for 6 months just writing back and forth. However, when I met him, it was not the same as, it didn't turn me on as the same way. So you really have to move quickly to meeting the person. That's important.
The other thing that I was fascinated about the essay platform of Grey Love is some of the kind of racier things that might be explored. I'm curious, in the essays, do you discover any kinds of trends? Is there much discussion about sex aids, toys, Viagra, even the use of condoms? Was there much interaction in the essays talking about that, or didn't weigh into, or many did not weigh into that?
Not many. Most of the talk, as I recall, and Nan certainly knows the book better than I do, was about bodies. one of the things that many people found was that they had to talk to their partner about their particular pleasures, but also their limitations. And so you sort of had to strategize sexual encounters in ways you might not have to. We certainly didn't have to with younger bodies.
Mm.
Also, there is in the book a topic that's not easy to talk about. And in fact, the two people who wrote about it didn't use their real names. And it's about having more than one partner at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was interesting that they were the only two who didn't use their own names.
You know, it's interesting to me. We make it as a joke, but we also kind of cheer it. In Florida, we have the largest retirement community in the world. It's called The Villages. It's about 4 hours north of here in Fort Lauderdale. And The Villages has more than 100,000 seniors. It calls itself an active retirement community. And all behind gate, multiple main streets, and it basically is a self-contained city of seniors. And annually, The Villages always makes news in rotations of the presidential election. Generally, the GOP candidate that is the nominee lands the plane at The Villages. It always makes news. And the other thing that you're always guaranteed every year to make news of The Villages is the reporting as a zip code of The Villages. It has the highest reporting transmission data of sexually transmitted diseases in America. and we always make the joke, wow, the seniors up there at The Villages are just really all at it. And so it's proof positive that the senior community is still desirous of relationship and activity. I want to talk about some compare and contrast of seniors versus other age groups. There's different issues for seniors, like dealing with death or the loss of spouse or divorce, various different ways. Gray Love explores differences from the experiences of the essays in the book compared to like Millennials. Some of the essays are so poignant. Can you share examples of issues that seniors face that maybe Millennials don't think about? What kinds of stories did essays explore?
I think.
How about your essay of the multiple presences?
Yes, good. I have a short piece called Cozy Crowded Bed. And one of the things you're told when you're dating is not to mention like your past lover or past husband. And for seniors, many of the people in the book have had 20-year, 30-year, 40-year relationships. And so when you start dating again, you can't like just forget that happened. Although one of the guy that I mentioned who dated looking for a man, he was told by one of the guys he dated that he had to get rid of the bed that he slept in with his previous partner because he wanted the history of the person crossed out.
Completely eliminated.
Yes, completely eliminated. Whereas I decided I can't eliminate my husband. And Dan had a long-term relationship. And so what I wrote about was that in our bed, and it's clearly a metaphor, in our bed is his wife and my husband, and it's crowded and we like it. You know, so we talk, it's very important that we share that rather than hide it.
I love that. That's a beautiful story. One of the last things I wanted to ask you about is the justification of the book, Gray Love. We're in such a disposable society about older Americans, certainly in older LGBT. Even in our own LGBTQ community, we have a bit of a rejection kind of thing, our obsession to youth. And I constantly am reminded, and I constantly remind, well, that's not a unique LGBT thing. That's an American thing in terms of rejection. What is it that you're hoping to accomplish by this collection of essays by so many different and unique and interesting people about gray love and what's experienced past 60. What is it you're hoping to accomplish in the book?
Many things. Yeah.
Yeah.
That it's never too late to desire to have sex, to find a partner. It's never too late to look for love. I think that's one of the basic pieces of the book. The other thing is that we want to make sure that everyone understands that online dating can be positive. It causes burnout, you get depressed, etc. But if you look at it as an adventure and something interesting, it can be positive. Also, I think when we've talked about this, that there's a spectrum of possible relationships, forms. It doesn't have to be the binary, either together or apart, married or single. There's a whole spectrum. And I think then, and we've said this also, that new relationships, when you're over 60, have pluses and have minuses. But I did want to say one thing, make sure that people know about this. I think, as you said early on, that it's a youth-oriented culture, our culture. But there are some positive signs that businesses are beginning to realize that older people have money, and that, like the picture of Martha Stewart on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Well, that was positive, and for me, a little negative, because she doesn't look like 81. She looks more like 41, but it's positive. And then the last thing I wanted to announce was that I've never watched The Bachelor, but apparently, as of the fall, there's going to be the Senior Bachelor,
Yes,
Golden Bachelor.
Is. That's right.
So they're recognizing finally that older people date and have desire and are attractive.
And our market.
Yes, in our market. And the last thing that someone has said is, well, now that they're going to do the Golden Bachelor, the next thing is Gay Bachelor.
Yeah, absolutely. And we remind everybody in our community, in the LGBTQ community, the Golden Girls is beloved, even all of these decades later. We just absolutely loved it. One thing that I have read repeatedly, and I've read comments relating to your book, and we just get that right out there. Many people, many sociologists argue that the lifespan for a human is measured in 3 stages: age birth to age 30. And then you move into a second stage of age 30 to age 60. And for those in 30 to 60, they would not want to give up their age 1 to 30. But likewise, the importance of the second steps in life were so vitally important. But then you have the third stage of life that begins at 60, and it is equally, nearly as long, and could be as long, and equally important to the first steps of your life and the second stage of your life. Why would you give up your third stage of your life? So it's the justification of why your book, Gray Love, Stories About Dating and New Relationships After 60, is so important, because it celebrates the third stages of all of our lives that we want. And I always remind all of my younger friends, you're going to get to my age one day, and you're going to realize how your joke is not true, because you're going to say, my life at 63 is precious also. We remind our viewers, issues that face the LGBTQ plus senior community are vital for the health of our entire LGBTQ plus community. Seniors are important. We invite you to go and learn about SAGE. SAGE is America's most important advocacy and service organization for LGBTQ plus elders. Their motto is, and I love it, we refuse to be invisible. We also encourage you to visit, and this may come as a surprise to you, the American Association of Retired People. The AARP has a robust and embracing safe space and various programs for LGBTQ+, and is the world's largest advocacy organization for senior rights, healthcare, travel, and yes, advice on and recommendations for gray relationships and sex. So check out aarp.org. You want to make sure you get this book, Gray Love. You can get it at rutgersuniversitypress.org, or you can go to Amazon or any of your favorite book ordering platforms online to get it. It's a very interesting opportunity for the LGBTQ community to read more and encourage you to literally get out there. For more information, as I told you, visit sageusa.com. And we want to thank Nan Bauer Maglin and Dan Hood for talking with us today to the entire LGBTQ plus community on Unapologetically Queer. Thank you both.
Thank you.
You.